Hey there, Jeremy Goodrich, your host for the Shine Insurance YouTube channel. And today we're going to answer a question I get all the time. What is an umbrella policy? Specifically for your real estate investment entities. What's an umbrella? I get it all the time. We're going to answer it in this video today. All right, so what will we address in this video? Well, first, we're going to talk about liability, key to understand if you want to understand an umbrella. The second thing is liability limits, also key to understand. Third thing is what is an umbrella, the role of an umbrella in all this liability talk. And finally, do you need one? Going to address all those things very quickly in this video today. But before we do that, let's talk about a rookie mistake that folks make and a confusion that people have all the time. An umbrella policy does not have anything to do with coverage for the building or the belongings inside of the building. That's called property coverage, and an umbrella is an excess liability policy. We're going to dig right into liability coverage, but it's not property coverage. So if you're thinking about an umbrella helping you with property coverage somehow, that's just incorrect. An umbrella has nothing to do with property coverage. So what does an umbrella have to do with? Well, let's talk about liability coverage. These are bad things that happen to other people because of you or your properties. So if someone accuses you of doing something bad to them, accuses you of an injury they experienced because of your property, that is accused of being liable, and that is where your liability coverage comes in. So again, coverage on your policy for when you are accused of being liable of something. This could cover medical bills for injuries or death, settlement payouts if it's found that you're liable for some other loss on top of medical injuries, court costs and lawyer fees, which are almost always a part of these processes. And a key point on this is that most policies will provide the lawyer of their choosing. So most insurance companies have large law elements to them. They have attorneys in-house, and so they're going to use their in-house attorneys, or they're going to hire local attorneys. You certainly can have some input in some of those conversations, but generally they're going to pick, and that can be confusing in a situation. So it's just good to know right from the beginning. Okay, so that's liability coverage. We also need to understand liability limits to be able to understand an umbrella. Liability limits are really simple. It's the most the insurance company will pay for all those things, right? So it is the highest amount that the company will pay. When they hit that ceiling, they stop paying and their coverage is over. You have to take care of the rest of the cost associated with whatever that bad thing was. So what is an umbrella? Well, it is a very simple, easy way to add additional liability coverage on top of your primary policy limits. That's why it's called excess liability coverage, because you have primary coverage on your regular policy, and then you can add extra policy coverage on top of your liability limits so that you can have additional liability coverage. One of the nice things about it is it can extend over many properties, and so it can be over the top of many separate policies, which makes it very flexible, and you just know you have it. Generally, you can purchase these in $1 million increments, so you could buy $1 million umbrella. That's sort of the smallest one you can buy, but you could buy a $5 million, $10 million, $20 million umbrella, and so on and so forth. So let's look at an example. Let's say you have 10 properties, and all 10 of those properties have $300,000 of liability coverage. That is incredibly low, and could be breached pretty quickly. That limit could run out in a bad case situation, and then you're out of pocket on every additional cost associated with that. So you may say, whoa, that's not enough liability insurance coverage. How can I get more? And I say, well, there's a great way to do it. Purchase a $1 million liability umbrella. It's fairly inexpensive. I would say between $80 and $120 per property is generally the cost of a $1 million umbrella. Can be cheaper than that if you have a lot of properties. But I'm going to put $1 million umbrella over the top of all of them in a simple way, adding a bunch of liability coverage there. So what do you have? Well, each house has $30,000 or $300,000 of liability coverage. That's kind of low. But now we've added $1 million over the top of that, over the top of the entire thing. So you end up with $1.3 million of liability coverage, much better than the $300,000 you had before you decided to purchase this liability umbrella, which is great. You made a great decision there, tripled your liability coverage, more than tripled your liability coverage, and made sure that even in worst case scenarios, you're going to have enough liability coverage. So do you need an umbrella? Well, I just described the reason why you certainly could need an umbrella, but I want to reframe it a little bit. You definitely need smart liability limits. How you do that is up to you. There's really only two ways. One is increasing the limits on your underlying policy, and the second way is adding a liability umbrella. But how you do the combination of those things is really up to you. You could increase the underlying. That's what I would do first. It tends to be a little bit cheaper than the umbrella, and then I would add an umbrella, which does a nice job of adding an extra $1 million of coverage. One rule of thumb is definitely to cover your assets, and what I mean by that is if you look at the asset base in your entity, your LLC, however you have it set up, and say, well, this is the amount of assets I have, you want to make sure your liability coverage at least covers over the top of those assets. I would definitely talk with your financial advisor, talk with your lawyer, talk with your accountant, make sure that those folks have insights into what they think you should insure and how they think you should set that up. But a basic rule of thumb is to cover your assets and don't go below $1 million of coverage. Liability coverage is fairly inexpensive. It doesn't make any sense to expose yourself to a worst case scenario where you lose your assets because you didn't put enough liability coverage on your policy. Liability coverage is the most important coverage that you have on your investment property policies, and you need to make sure it's at least $1 million of coverage. And if you have 10 properties, it should be significantly more than that. If you have 25 properties, it should be more than that. So start with $1 million and go up based on the asset base that you have. Finally, last rookie mistake. And this is thinking that your personal umbrella policy will cover over the top of LLCs. You've created an LLC as a separate entity, and so that separates it from your personal coverage. So your home and auto policy, having an umbrella over the top of that, great, really good decision, super smart. But that may not extend over the top of your investment properties, particularly if you've invested with other people. Talk with your insurance advisor, make sure that it's clear what your umbrella is covering, whether it's covering over your properties, whether it's covering over your personal stuff, and how those things overlap, because you've created a separation with that LLC. And a lot of times you think your personal umbrella is going to cover over the top of the LLC, and in fact, it will not. So don't make that rookie mistake. That's a big one. All right, what did we address in this conversation? What is liability coverage? What are liability limits? The role of an umbrella, which is simply to increase the liability limits and expand it over the top of multiple properties. And then finally, do you need one? Well, you certainly need smart liability coverage. How you do that is really up to you. All right. Well, if you'd like more from Shine, we would love to help you out. We'd love to talk with you about whether Shine is right for you when it comes to an insurance advisor that is actually a part of your team. Feel free to click the link right below me if you'd like to talk with us about that. And if you'd like to watch some more videos or learn more about real estate investing and real estate investors insurance, there's a link right next to me to the playlist to do exactly that. All right, until the next time, don't forget to shine.